1.77 million years ago, someone lost all their teeth, not gradually, all at once, or close enough that by the time they died, every socket in their jaw had regrown smooth bone over the gap, which means they had been living without teeth for years in the early Pleistocene, in what is now the country of Georgia, before fire was in common use, before anything we recognize as language. And yet they ate. For years after losing the ability to chew, they kept eating, which means someone else chewed for them. Tonight, we are going to follow the oldest question any human being has ever asked. What do you do when someone you care about is suffering, and you don't know why or how to stop it? The answer goes back further than you think, further than language, further than tools, further possibly than anything else we call human. And by the end of this, you will never think about a doctor's office the same way again. The individual from Dmanisi, Georgia, is the oldest known human ancestor ever found outside of Africa. They lived 1.77 million years ago, before Homo sapiens existed, before Neanderthals existed, at a moment when our lineage was barely distinguishable from the apes we had recently been. And this person, this ancient ancestor, had lost all of their teeth and been cared for long enough to survive it. We do not know who helped them. We do not know if they asked. We only know that someone did. Fast forward 1.7 million years. A cave in the Zagros Mountains of what is now northern Iraq. The year is approximately 60,000 BC. His name, given to him by the archaeologist who found his bones, is Shanidar I. Shanidar I was a Neanderthal, and Shanidar I should not have been alive. His right arm had been amputated at the elbow, deliberately, surgically, long before his death. The bone shows it healed over years. He was blind in his left eye from a healed blow to the skull. He had a crushed foot, severe arthritis in his spine, degeneration in both knee joints. He was in constant pain by any measure we can apply. And yet, the bone record is clear. He lived for years after these injuries, possibly decades, which means someone brought him food when he could not hunt. Someone kept the fire. Someone stayed through the nights when the cold was bad and the pain was worse. Here's what strikes me every time I think about this. His group was not large. Resources were not abundant. Keeping him alive cost them something real. They did it anyway. In 2022, researchers published findings from a limestone cave in Borneo, a skeleton, buried approximately 31,000 years ago. The lower left leg was missing, not absent from the grave, but absent from the body. The bone at the cut site was smooth, remodeled, healed. This limb had been surgically removed while the person was alive. The operation had been performed cleanly enough, in conditions sterile enough, with skill precise enough, that the patient did not die of infection. And then they lived. For 6 to 9 more years after the amputation, based on the degree of bone healing. 31,000 years ago, in a rainforest in Borneo, a human being performed surgery. And it worked. This is the oldest confirmed surgical amputation ever found. But it is not the oldest surgery. Trepanation, the deliberate drilling or scraping of a hole through the living skull, appears across 6 continents going back at least 10,000 years. A skull found in Ensisheim, France, dated to around 5100 BC, shows 2 separate trepanation holes, both healed. This person survived 2 skull operations. But here's what nobody tells you about trepanation. In parts of Peru, archaeologists have found sites where up to 40% of skulls show evidence of the procedure. And when they analyzed survival rates across different time periods at the same sites, the rates improved. Over centuries, the operators got better. They were teaching each other, correcting mistakes, passing down what worked. That is not instinct. That is medicine. In 1991, hikers in the Alps found a body frozen in a glacier at the border between Austria and Italy. He had been dead for 5,300 years. He became known as Ötzi. What made Ötzi remarkable wasn't just his preservation, it was his kit. Among his belongings, 2 species of bracket fungus, tied deliberately to a leather strap. One of them, birch polypore, contains active compounds against intestinal parasites. Otzi's gut showed a heavy whipworm infection. He was, in other words, carrying the specific treatment for a condition he had. Someone, at some point, had learned that this fungus helped, had tried it, watched it, taught it. And Otzi crossed the Alps with his medicine packed. But here's the part that changes the whole picture. In the same cave system where Shanidar I was found, Shanidar Cave in Iraq, archaeologists excavated dense clusters of pollen around several burial sites. 8 plant species: yarrow, groundsel, ephedra, hollyhock, grape hyacinth. Ephedra is a bronchodilator, still used in modern medicine. Yarrow slows bleeding and was used in field wounds as late as World War I. Hollyhock reduces inflammation. The debate continues over whether the plants were placed deliberately or arrived by wind or animal. But here is what is not in debate. Neanderthals and early humans lived alongside these plants for hundreds of thousands of years. They watched what happened when animals ate them. They tried. They observed. Whether they called it medicine or magic or simply something that worked, they were doing pharmacology without a word for it. In 2015, researchers published an analysis of a tooth found in northern Italy, belonging to someone who lived approximately 14,000 years ago. The tooth had a large cavity, and inside the cavity, they found evidence of deliberate scraping, tool marks consistent with a sharp flint instrument used to clean out infected tissue. The marks were precise, systematic. They covered the full extent of the cavity. This is the oldest known dental treatment in the archaeological record. But it gets stranger. At a site in Pakistan called Mehrgarh, dating to around 7000 BC, archaeologists found 11 individuals with drilled teeth. Not cracked from injury, drilled with a bow drill, the same rotational tool used to start fires, used here to remove decaying tissue from inside living teeth. Some of the drilled teeth showed no decay at the point of drilling. Preventive work. And several individuals had drill marks on multiple separate teeth at different stages of wear. They kept going back. 11 people in a Neolithic settlement, voluntarily returning to have a spinning stone drill put inside their mouths because it helped more than it hurt. The dentist had regulars. 9,000 years ago, but there was a category of illness that none of this reached. Fever with no visible wound, a mind that changed overnight, seizures, visions, diseases that seemed to come from the air, or from something done wrong, or from something that could not be seen. For these, the earliest humans turned to something different. In a cave in northern Israel, dated to approximately 12,000 years ago, archaeologists found the burial of a woman who appears to have held a specific role in her community. She had been placed with unusual care. Beside her, the complete wing of a golden eagle, 50 tortoise shells, the pelvis of a human being who had died before her, the foot of a wild boar, the tail of an aurochs. These were not food. They were not tools. They were arranged with intention around a specific person in a way that no other burial at the site matched. She was almost certainly a healer of a different kind. What we would call a shaman. The person her community went to when the fever would not break, when the child would not wake, when the wound had been cleaned and sewn and still the patient got worse. Her tools were different from the surgeon's tools, but her function was the same, to stand between a person in suffering and the thing that was causing it, and try to do something about it. And for thousands of years, for hundreds of thousands of people, what she did was all there was. Think about what it actually took to get here. Every drug in every pharmacy, every surgeon who knows where to cut, every dentist, every scan, every antibiotic, all of it is downstream of a chain of observation that goes back 1.77 million years to someone who chewed food for a person who had lost their teeth. We built medicine before we built cities, before we built writing, before we built organized religion as far as the record shows. Nobody voted on it. Nobody issued a law. We just kept doing it, kept watching, kept trying, kept passing it down. Because when someone we knew was suffering, something in us moved toward them instead of away. There's a word for that now. A whole system built around it. Centuries of accumulated knowledge, institutions, licensing, research trials. But at the beginning, it was just a person in a cave and someone who decided to stay. Subscribe if you want to keep pulling on questions like this. The ones that look simple and then open into something much older than you expected. Because next time, we're going to ask what the first humans did when someone in the group broke the rules, when someone hurt someone else, when there was no court, no police, no law. What happened then is not what you think. See you out there.